Hello and welcome to Snails and Fairy Dust. Today I'm going to show you how to make these beaded fringe earrings. This specific pattern I call Phoebe's Bling. I've designed them for my sister-in-law. If you would like to follow along with the pattern, you could find it in the links below on my Shopify site or my Etsy shop. If you don't want to follow along with the pattern and you're new to beading, you can still learn a lot of technique from this video. So let's get going. First, we're going to take a look at supplies. I have size 11 Miyuki Delica seed beads I'm using. I'm using Fireline and a 6-pound weight. I'm also using a nylon beading thread for the bottom fringe part of the earring. I have a size 12 beading needle. I have these ear wires, and I have these little thread guards, which will protect the thread at the top of the earring. And I have scissors, and I have my pattern. So let's get started. To start, we're going to cut 4 feet of our Fireline beading thread and then pick up the first 4 beads in your pattern. Once you have those, you're going to slide it down towards the end of your thread, leaving a 4-inch tail at the bottom, and then you're going to take your needle and come back around, back up through the first 2 beads you've added, which will look something like this. And then you're going to pull that tightly, and it's going to force the beads to sit together like this. The stitch that we're working on now is called a ladder stitch. So I'm going to loop back around this again just because they're the first 2 beads in my earring, so I want them to be extra strong. So I'm going to go back down through the first 2 beads, and then back up, like so, and then down one more time, and we're ready to start the rest of our row. So from here on out, we're just going to add 2 beads at a time for this row of ladder stitch. So I pick up the next 2 beads in my pattern, and I'm going to come down through the last 2 beads. And now I come back up through the 2 beads I just added. And now I'm ready for the next beads. So pick up 2 more beads, and I'm going to come up through the last beads I've added. Pull those tightly. I have a little gap there, so I pull it over to close that gap. And then I'm going to come down through these last 2 beads I've added. You don't want large gaps between the beads because this is our foundation row that we're going to build the rest of the earring off of. So now I'm just going to keep adding 2 beads at a time in that same manner. Pick up 2 beads, come down through the last ones, and then back up through those ones you've just added, and just continue building your row of ladder stitch this way. I believe in the pattern there are 17 groups of 2 beads in this first row. So when you get to your 17 beads, meet me back here, and then we will look at how to add the next row. So see you in a bit. Okay, hopefully you have something that looks like this right now, and you should be proud of yourself because you've just learned your first stitch. And we're going to pick up the first 4 beads in the next row of our pattern. So we pick up the 4 beads, and there are these little bridges, thread bridges, in between the beads we've added. And you want to come under the second thread bridge from the outside, and you're going to pull that through. And your beads will look sort of like this, a bit wonky. So we have to tidy that up. So we're going to go back up through the second 2 beads we've just added, and pull that up. And then we're going to go down through the outside beads that we've just added. Sorry for the bad camera work. There, you can see it a bit better now. So you come down through those beads. And then to finish this off, once I get untangled here, there we go. And then to finish this off, I'm going to come back up through those second two beads, which will make all of the beads sit straight the way they're supposed to. So I'm coming up through there, pull that tightly, and now they're sitting the way they need to. Sometimes you just have to wiggle one into place with your finger, but there you go. You should have something like that. And now for the rest of this row, we're just going to add beads 2 at a time. So following your pattern, the next 2 beads in my pattern are these 2 black. So I'm going to come underneath the next thread bridge, like so. And then this time I'm just going to come straight back up through those 2 beads. And you're done. And then you add your next 2 beads. So pick up your next 2, slide your needle underneath the next thread bridge, and then just come straight back up through those 2 beads. And you're going to continue to build the row in this way. This stitch is called brick stitch. So you're going to continue to work this row of brick stitch 2 beads at a time until you get to the end of that row. And then when you get to the end of the row, meet me back here, and I'm going to show you how to start a row one more time because I feel that's the trickiest part of brick stitch. So come back here, we'll go over that one more time, and you'll be good to go. So see you in a second. Okay, here we are at the end of our second row of this earring, and I just want to show you again how we're going to start the next row of brick stitch. So I've picked up 4 beads. I am coming underneath the second thread bridge. And then I'm going to come back up through those second 2 beads that I've just added. And now I'm going to go down through the first 2. And then back up through the second 2 again. And then they are sitting the way they need to. And you can build the rest of the row 2 at a time the way we have been. Okay, so keep working that. When you get to the top of your triangle, meet me back here and we will add the earring findings. So I hope you're starting to feel confident and you enjoy this process. I'll see you at the top of the earring. Okay, so here we are at the top of the earring, and we need to add a thread guard so our thread is protected where it will attach to our ear wire. You could also do this with beads. I definitely prefer to do it with a thread guard though. So I bring my needle through the bottom of the thread guard, pull that down to the base of the earring, and then I'm going to bring my needle down through the other side of the thread guard, and then through the outside 2 beads in the top of my earring, like so. And then we pull that tightly, and we want to be able to, oh, well, first of all, this is what you don't want to happen. You want to make sure your thread stays inside that little channel on the thread guard. That's very important. So sometimes you have to back it up and go slowly and just make sure it's in there, because otherwise it's not being guarded. So sorry, it's out of focus for a second, but there you go. Now the thread is where it's supposed to be. And we want to loop this around and take our thread through that thread guard again. So I'm going to work down one set of 2 beads so that I could work up the next set of 2 beads and get to that outside edge again. So come up through there, and now I'm at the outside 2 beads where we started connecting our thread guard. So I'm going to come up through those 2 beads and through the thread guard, and then come down the other side of the thread guard and back through those 2 outside beads. And then that will make it secure because you've gone through there twice. And after this, we're going to weave the thread down into the beadwork, and we're going to end it. So weave down a couple of rows, and then you're going to find 2 neighboring beads, 2 sets of 2 beads that are next to each other. And what you want to do is loop around those beads, and that's going to create tension and a sort of anchor for your thread. So here we are. I have these 2 beads, and I'm going to loop around these 2 until it's nice and secure. Usually I do it twice, 2 loops. And then once I've done that, I will weave the needle back down through a couple more rows, and then I could just simply clip that string because it's nice and secure. So I'm going to go down 1, and another one. And now I'm really clear to just clip that string and move on to the next thing. Okay, here I am. I have clipped my string, and I'm getting ready to start my thread for the fringe. And this I'm using the nylon thread, and it's a bit curly and it's a bit stretchy. So you need to stretch out the kinks out of the thread before you start, because you don't want it to stretch on its own later. So you stretch that, thread your needle, and now we're going to anchor this thread so we could start the fringe. So I pick a spot about 2 rows up from the bottom, and I'm just going to do that little loop around 2 neighboring bead sets again in order to anchor this thread so that we can begin making our fringe. So you see I found my 2 little neighboring beads. I'm going to go around those 2 times. And then once I have anchored that thread, I'm going to bring my needle down through the outside edge of my row of beads so that I end up exiting on the first 2 beads on the outside row of ladder stitch where we began. So we're coming out right down there is where we want to get to. So when you are there, I will meet you back here. And now we're ready to add our first row of fringe. So I'm going to pick up the beads according to my pattern. And we're going to zip ahead because you don't need to watch me pick up beads. And now we have all of our beads. I slide those down. And then I pick up the end bead. So this is going to be the end bead, and it's going to hold the other beads in place. It's sort of the base of the fringe. So bring my needle back up through the main fringe beads. Make sure you don't miss any. And always double check your fringe. It's such an annoying thing to just mess up the pattern in your fringe. So I'm coming up through all of those beads and then through the first 2 beads in the row of ladder stitch. There we go. And now we're going to come down through the next 2 beads in the row of ladder stitch. And there we go. We have our first row of fringe. Now we're going to add the second row of fringe. Here we go. We have our beads. And then again, you add your end bead. I'm checking my pattern to make sure everything looks the way it's supposed to. And now I'm coming up through all of those fringe beads. Don't want to miss any. Get that little guy that I just missed, and then up through those 2 beads in the row of ladder stitch, the same 2 beads that we started this row of fringe in. There we go. And then we're going to come down through the next 2 beads in the row of ladder stitch. And we're just going to carry on like that until we've completed all of the fringe. So you've totally got this. We're so close to the end. Meet me back here when you have all of your fringe done. You're going to be super proud of yourself, and I'll see you then. Okay, bye. Okay, so here we are. We have completed our fringe. We're feeling pretty awesome. I have a couple beads left here, and I'm going to come through those last beads, back up through that last row of ladder stitch, and then I am going to admire my work and make sure one last time before I end this thread that there are no mistakes, because now is the only time you could go back and fix them. So I like the way it looks. I'm now going to weave this thread up through to the top a couple of rows, and again find 2 sets of beads that I'm going to loop around and anchor that thread, and then I can clip it. So I found my 2 beads. You've done this before, and I'm sure you're pro at it by now. So we're just going to speed ahead. I will go around 2 times and then probably up another 2 sets of beads before I clip it, and then that will be good to go. Meet me back here when you have woven in all of your threads, and then we will add the ear wire at the top, and we're almost done. Okay, so here we are. We have the ear wire. I have a pair of pliers, and I'm going to just open this gently, just wide enough to slip this wire guard on, and then I'm going to close it again. The thing is, also with this kind of ear wire, you could totally do this with your hand. So if you don't have pliers, don't worry. So I do a little squeeze to make sure that it's flat, and then we're good to go. Look at that. You should be so proud of yourself. And this is the finished set of earrings. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you get lots of compliments when you wear your earrings. Or if you sell your earrings, whatever you want to do with them, you are feel free to sell them. That's completely fine with my pattern. You just can't mass produce them. And don't forget that you could find the pattern on my Etsy shop or my Shopify store. The links are below in the description. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today, and see you soon.